Okay, so I love dark hints. When a show gives a hint at a super dark storyline that's going to be coming up, I absolutely fucking love it. Mobius is visiting Renslayer. They're in the office, and he takes a swig of his scotch and he puts the glass down on the table. When he puts the glass down on the table, pause that. Look at that table. There are multiple different outlines for where previous cups have been and have been placed on the table repeatedly. Renslayer reprimands him and he grabs the coaster. Well, first, Mobius responds that, the outlines on the table are just him from his previous visits because he's her favorite agent. He takes the coaster, he puts it down, he puts the scotch on the table. Let's focus on those markings on the table. Because there's a secret to Mobius, which is the fact that he's a clone. Not exactly a clone. So the way in which it works is, at the TVA, we are introduced to Mobius, but he's a variant. So spread out across the entirety of the TVA are other Agent Mobiuses. When he's in Renslayer's office, Mobius points out, and Renslayer as well, that there are trinkets from all of the missions that he's worked on for her because she is his handler. However, he starts pointing out that there are certain things on the walls that he doesn't remember ever giving her from any of the missions that he's ever been on. One of them's a snow globe, the other one's a pen. Now, Renslayer is the handler for Mobius. He's her main field agent. So are a bunch of other Mobiuses. The reason why Mobius is seeing things on the wall that he's never given her is because another version of Mobius has given that to Renslayer. Basically, the TVA are using variants of their staff to operate throughout the timeline. The TVA is breaking its own laws. The TVA's laws are basically when a variant steps outside of its timeline, that variant gets snatched up, brought to the TVA, executed, and then the timeline is reset and everything moves forward. However, the TVA is massive. It is at least the size of its own planet. How does something that massive operate? How do you operate a business that has to deal with a damn near infinite number of events happening across an entire timeline where you have to prevent billions to trillions to... What comes after a trillion? I never really thought about that before. A zillion? We have to prevent zillions of these different variants from happening at multiple different times across the entirety of the timeline. How do you prevent something like that from happening? Easy. You use a workforce that is nothing but variants. Mobius is a variant. There are millions of him that work at the TVA. They just do not intersect or overlap with one another. Now, the intersection point would be Renslayer. But the TVA also uses technology that allows people to go from one point to another. So it's not exactly that hard for her to be able to maintain which Mobius she's talking to at any point in time and sending on a mission. Not only is that, but every single version of Mobius that works for the TVA, they all have different personalities. They all have different jobs. They all have different ranks. This Mobius is a field agent, but chances are there's a Mobius that's a judge. Then there's a Renslayer that's a judge. There's chances are that there's a Mobius who's a coffee boy, a Mobius who works in the library, a Mobius who's a security guard, a Mobius who's the head of security. Like, across the entirety of the TVA, that has to be one of the big rules and big taboos, which is to make sure that none of the variants intersect with the other variants. So there are probably only sections and quadrants that these people can operate in that they are not allowed to go outside of, because if they do go outside of it, there's another version of them over there in quadrant. So we can understand where, let's say our Mobius operates in quadrant A, and he's a field agent. He's the head field agent. Our Loki is also in Quadrant A working with him. Next to Quadrant A is Quadrant B. That Mobius is a security guard. Quadrant C, that Mobius is a librarian. Quadrant D, that Mobius is a judge. Quadrant E, and on 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 and on. That is how you maintain the sacred timeline without having to deal with, because if you notice the TVA, there are no children. Like, none whatsoever. There are no kids. What happens when a Mobius dies on a mission? He gets replaced by another variant of Mobius. Over and over and over and over and over again. And the Jet Ski magazine is the major thing. It's a holdover from where the variant was taken from before his mind was erased, and then he was put to work in the TVA. And that's going to come back to play a big deal later on in the season when Mobius discovers the truth about himself, which is that the TVA is basically run by nothing but variants across the board. But that's Mobius. That's the secret to Mobius. That's his secret and the dark secret of the TVA, which is that the Time Masters are more or less kidnapping people. They're kidnapping and brainwashing variants to work for them. And I can't wait to see how this plays out, because I already know that once Mobius discovers the truth, he's going to absolutely have a meltdown. Like, my brain is having a meltdown thinking about the multiple different ways in which this can go. But that's the video. Peace.